Welcome back to our Scratch Coding series. In today's lesson, we are going to learn about something very important in programming, variables. Now, you might have heard of variables in math, but in programming, they're a little different. A variable is like a storage box where you can keep information that can change while your program is running. So for example, we're going to use a variable to keep score in the most recent game that we started creating from our last session. If you're just starting off and you didn't see the last session or you don't have this information, you can basically pick any sprite, pause the video, and input this code. Go ahead and make sure to place your sprite in this area as well, and then you can pause it here, bring in another sprite. If you want to use a ball, you can use these measurements. Basically, it's going to have this ball appear right here. So let's get started with making that variable and keeping score. So basically you want to go to the variable category, and I'm already there. And you're going to make a variable, and you can call your variable anything. Obviously we're using it for the score, and I usually put it for all sprites. When I'm making games, I haven't come across a time where it should be only for this sprite, but I'm sure there's definitely a reason why they have that there. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go to events, and when you want the game to start, you want the score to be 0. So you right now it's just like an empty box, and basically you have to tell the computer to put, the number 0. You could think of it like that. You're putting that in the box. You click this and you go to score because that's the name of your variable. And then all you're going to do is whenever your sprite makes a complete jump, that means it was successful, because right now we have the game programmed to stop whenever the ball hits the cat. Just for those that weren't here in the last session, I'll show you real quick. And so he jumps over it, but when the ball hits him, the game will stop. So we want it to keep score. So we're going to change the score. We'll put that right after it makes a complete jump. You're going to change the score by 1. And you can essentially change that number to anything in case your students wanted to, make the score 50 points, 20 points, whatever, for having a successful jump. And so then now when we test it, if you notice, every time he makes a successful jump, it's changing the score. And then when it stops, and you can just press the green flag again, you notice the score went to 0 again. And that's a pretty easy way to use a variable to keep score. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how you can use variables in a situation where you're going to use, we're going to end up using 2 variables, and we're going to use one to store information and one to where the information might change. So to do that, we're actually going to first have to get out of this one and start a new program. So if you haven't saved your program, make sure you save it. Then click this Scratch icon in the upper left corner, and then we will go to create. And what we're going to do first is we're going to change our sprites and our stage. So let's get rid of this one, and then we'll add it. And for this activity or this project, we are going to use Dan. Where is he? Here he is. All right. So we're going to put Dan here, and we're going to say that this is his bedroom right here. Okay. Now let's start on our code. We want our sprite to greet the user and then ask them if they can guess what number they are thinking of between 1 and 10. So for that, we are going to use a block of, let's start with events first. And we'll bring out when the green flag is clicked, and then we'll use a block of code from the looks. And then we'll use this for our greeting. It'll say, hey, let's play a guessing game. And then the next part is he's going to ask the user the question, telling them that he's thinking of a number between 1 and 10 and if they can guess it. So since we're going to want the user to input some information, and then we're going to do something with that input, we're going to go to sensing and bring out this block of code. And in here, we'll type, I'm thinking of a number 1 and 10. What do you think it is? And then you're also going to drag out the answer because they are going to give you some input. Okay, next we're going to take care of our variables, and we are going to create two variables. One variable is going to be the random number that our sprite thinks of, and the other variable is going to be the user's guess. Now, the variable that we create that's going to be the random number, that will not change, but the user's guess variable might change throughout the game depending on how many guesses it will take the user to get the right number. So we'll go to make a variable, and the first one we will call random number, and we'll leave it for all sprites, and then we'll make another one that will be called user's guess. And we don't really want, you can leave the user's guess showing, that way the user knows what numbers they're choosing, but you definitely don't want the random number to show. Next, we're going to tell our program what to put in these variables that we created. So we're going to put here, set my variable to 0, and we are going to put random number there, or you could also use this and just click on random number. And luckily, they have a block of code that picks a random number. That's in the operators category, and we'll bring pick random 1 to 10. Now, this next part, we're going to use a forever loop, because what we're going to do in this next set of code is we're going to have different options, different conditionals. We're going to use an if then else conditional, and we're going to want 3 options. So we'll put another one in this second spot, and that will end up creating 3 options. But before we actually have this program go through the different options, we're going to first have to use the set my variable and put that right at the beginning, right where that forever loop starts. And for this one, it's going to be the user's guess, and we are going to set it to answer. Now, we're only going to need one of these little answer blocks, because that answer might change depending on the user's guess. And the reason we have these 3 options is because the user is either going to guess it correctly, or they're going to guess too high, or they're going to guess too low. And each time they guess a certain way, we're going to have our sprite help them or guide them if they're guessing it wrong. All right, now when taking care of the options, we're going to use blocks of code from the operators category. We're going to start with them saying if they get the answer correct. So we're going to go back to variables and put if the user's guess, drag one of these out, and put if the user's guess equals the random number. Then we're going to have our sprite say something like congratulations or good job. So for that, we just need to go to the looks category and bring out a block of code, and we'll say something simple like great job, but you can put whatever you want there. And then for this next option, we're going to use, you either decide what you want to use, whether it's going to be the greater than or less than, and we'll do greater than. And we'll go back to the variables and put if the user's guess is greater than the random number, then that means they guess too high. So we're gonna want our user to tell them they guess too high, but this time we want our user to guess again. So because we want that, we're not just going to use that block of code where it says something. We're going to have to go to the sensing category and use the block of code where you're asking them a question. But we will change that, and we'll put too high, guess again. Now the way, let me spell that correctly. Now the way this is working is, so you're, just to explain some of the coding and what you might want to tell your students, is that you asked the user in the beginning to guess a number,
And so that answer was put into the user's guess, and then it went through this block of code here. If they guessed it right, then you said, great job. If they guessed it too high, then we're going to tell them too high, guess again. And the next answer that they come up with is going to get put into that user's guess again, the variable. And it's going to go through this process again. And it's going to keep doing it until it gets to this spot where they guess it correctly. And so for this third option here, we don't even have to use a operator code of less than, because that is the only other option left. And so we'll just drag out this one, the ask again, and we will change that to too low, guess again. And here we can go ahead and run this. So let's play a guessing game. We will go with 3. It says too low, guess again. So let's try something like 8. That says too high, so now we know it's between 3 and 8. We could try 5. Still too high, so it's got to be 4. Let's hope this works. Yeah, it works. And so now that you know it works with this set of numbers, you can pretty much change right here in this area. You can change 1 to 100. But just make sure when you change it, you also change it in that question that begins the whole program. That's it for today's lesson on using variables in Scratch. Stay tuned for the next lesson, where we will learn how to use clones to create multiple copies of sprites dynamically in our Scratch programs.